Yo! Thank you for tuning in to episode 32 of The World is My Burrito, aka Twimby. Today, you're getting another Let's Talk About episode featuring the author of the Vitalerium series, Nicholas Keating Casbarro, about his first novel, Vitalerium: Descent into the Void. If you didn't see any of my social media posts, and I won't blame you if you didn't, this episode is aimed at those who have already read the novel. If you haven't made it that far, go dip your toes in the water with the Wait For It podcast interview posted April 30th, 2025. After that, I recommend reading the Vitalerium first novel. It's available as a physical book, an ebook on the Kindle store, and on Audible. Before we get into the interview, there is something very important we got to talk about. How to help unknown authors. Maybe some are just beginning, or maybe they've published a lot and are still unknown. The easiest way is obviously to review them wherever possible. Seriously, write something up in a notepad app while you're avoiding work responsibilities on the porcelain throne, copy it, then paste it into places like Goodreads, Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. And you will have to keep copying and pasting because despite Amazon owning Goodreads, those reviews aren't always shared. So you'll have to copy paste into Amazon and into Goodreads. It seems like a lot. It's not. Just do it. If you're interested in buying a physical book, please order it from your local bookstore. Who knows? Maybe that store will buy a few extra copies. Even if they don't, it has to pass through several real human hands to reach yours. It might take longer and you may pay a few bucks extra, but it will help out two people who need that money much more. If the author has a publisher, consider ordering it from them. Here in Tampa, I order new books through Bookends Ebor and comics through Green Shift Comics and Guitars. Message them. They know me by name and by butt size. Don't ask about the latter. There are other quick things that can be done, like posting about the novel or author on an online forum or related subreddit. Talk to your friends and family about it. Mention it in Discord. Share posts on Instagram or Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever you use. Hell, share podcasts that introduce people to the topic. I'm not even asking you to share my podcast or Nick's books, just any podcast that talks to any author about work you've enjoyed. It often takes a quick 30 to 45 minute interview to coerce me and others to get up and check out something new. The final thing that comes to mind is a big one. Request the book from your local library. If it gets approved, they'll at least get one copy. That one book has the potential to pass through hundreds, if not thousands of hands, possibly leading someone to buy their own personal copy to occupy a shelf. Maybe they'll buy it as a gift. If there's any weirdness or difficulty in your library website request process, you can also request content via Libby, which should ping your library that someone is interested in the content. Start with the library, end with Libby. All of these options, the ratings and reviews, the local bookstore, and the library, support the author both monetarily and through the type of exposure that actually matters. It gets real people to actually enjoy this. Reviews and ratings move them higher up digital lists. If there's enough interaction, maybe they'll get highlighted within the genre or as a new author and get thrown way up a list. This is not me telling you to leave fake reviews about today's topic or author, but me urging you to support those you actually know and enjoy. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know Eric Slater. That's Eric with a K, Slater with a D. If you liked his books, go leave reviews and do all the other things I just said. There's a lot of popular trash out there and plenty more that's just mid. I consume a lot of books between the hours of photo editing, photo taking, chores, cycling, kayaking, and driving I do every month. One of the things that slowed me down earlier this year was consuming a lot of dull, uninspiring content. And the only reason I found any of it was because it all came highly recommended. So do everyone a favor and give the gift of greater notoriety to those who actually make good material. enough of that. As with every interview, nothing went in the order expected, and it certainly didn't last as long as we wanted it to. Given the time, we could have given the audiobook a run for its length just talking about the novel. Big shouts outs to Sky Puppy Brewing for having great beer at a great location and not telling me to leave. As the old saying goes, it is better to buy lots of beer first than ask for permission later. With that, let's talk about Vitalerium Descent into the Void.
All right, so there's going to be an intro before this, so they already know some of this. But today we're chatting with Nicholas Keating Casbarro, because I always wanted to say Casbarro.
Oh, Casbarro's right. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, it's the audiobook. He says Casbarro, and it's like, I don't know, that doesn't feel right. But author of Vitalerium, Descent into the Void. Tonight we're here at Sky Puppy Brewing in Tampa. He's in town for Tampa Bay Comic-Con, which I happen to be working at as well. So this is like absolutely perfect timing. How's the convention going?
It's going fantastic. We've had a great convention, a lot of interest in sci-fi out there. I feel like sci-fi is kind of at a height right now, just because of the CGI ability and everything. Some of the worlds that have been described in books are now able to be brought to life on the screen in such a way that looks so realistic that it really brings the worlds that they're trying to build to life, and I've really enjoyed it. I've always been a fan of sci-fi, and so that's been really fun for me.
Yeah.
In terms of
I hadn't really thought about it, but you were just speaking earlier about playing Starfield.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, one of the questions you mentioned in episode with Phil and Eric about being inspired by Dune, which is current again, and we have Blade Runner 2049, which was like a decade ago now, but still fairly current. And it is kind of wild to see this like slow resurgence of sci-fi, and a lot of it in very like cult classic sci-fi hitting the mainstream. Also very relevant to like literally this weekend. I'm working at the Fallout booth, the Fallout Experience, and Fallout had the like knockout show on Netflix.
Yep.
So sci-fi and Western. So it's a real good time for sci-fi.
And I've loved seeing some of like my favorite sci-fis come to life. That has been a lot of fun for me, especially the Dune series, because Frank Herbert was a huge inspiration for me when I was a kid. Like my father actually gave me his version of Dune. Like it is the old book. Like it is
like the original printing.
Yeah, it's
nice.
Well worn, and I still have that today. I ought to frame it at this point. But I'm hoping to get mine, I guess, progress to that level a little bit quicker than a few decades later. I really I've got big plans for the series, and it may be unrealistic expectations, but I mean maybe that's what's required. As far as this series is concerned, I have 7 books planned, and it could turn into 8. It just depends on how long it's going to take me to write certain segments of the book. But generally speaking, I have the entire story arc of the series planned out. And like I said, I try to keep it fluid as far as like what leads us to the major events that occur that are just literally kind of hardwired into the story itself. How we get there is very much, it's fluid. It could change at any point in time. I mean, sometimes I just get little blips of inspiration that I realize I can do it better this way.
Okay.
And so like I said, it also helps to keep the writing a little bit more real, I guess. Because if you're planning a large series like this, it can get pretty linear if it seems like you're following just this predetermined narrative path. So as far as like everything in between those major events, I leave it up to the characters themselves, because the characters, their personalities, their little idiosyncrasies that make them them are going to dictate kind of what happens next. And I'm able to keep the real feel of the work by basically leaving a lot of things open to interpretation or open to change.
Okay.
So I basically know where the series is going to go,
Okay.
but how we get there is, I mean, it's anyone's guess at this point.
Okay. When you're talking about being guided by the characters, that comes up in some of the notes I have. In a lot of writing, I feel like it's kind of easy to tell that all of the characters are written by the same person. And they all speak the same. They all have like the same level of intelligence because they're being inspired by one person. And I really enjoyed a lot of the uniqueness of the characters. I felt like many of them are written a little bit different. There's even, there's a straight up correlation between Roman and Jarek about how we meet Jarek. We go through a couple of meetings of Jarek, and it's this like, Jarek sure sounds an awful lot like Roman. And Roman acknowledges that. He's like, dude, you grew up in a backwater area. You're just a figment of my imagination. Later in the book when he gets mad, and I like that. You're addressing the meta. You're giving a reason. Why does this character sound like Roman? And it's because it's Roman, at least as far as we know in book one. It's not Jarek if Jarek is the one who's less educated. But do you have to get in like a particular mindset when you write these characters? Like I think my favorite, maybe not favorite character, but my favorite written character is Norval. Because he stands out from everyone else. He has a lot of screen time, if you will, a lot of page time.
Yep.
And we've already spoken about Nails.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit last night. So you do have these characters who they're not all the same person. They're not all this copy-pasted noir type personality. So, yeah, do you have to get into like a certain mindset to just write a character?
Sometimes. What I will say is a number of the characters are based on people that I know personally. Some of them are based on friends of mine. Some of them are based on people that I've just met over the course of my life who actually were just inspirational type of people. One of the characters, Emmanuel, is actually based on a surgeon that I met at a convention in Mexico.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he gave me permission to use not only his name, but he's a seer of the order.
Yeah.
And he was I had met him at the ISBI convention in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he was just an absolute stud of a surgeon. I mean, he's a pediatric plastics burn surgeon. And he was from Nigeria and basically went back to Nigeria to treat burn victims, despite his training and despite the fact that this guy could have gone anywhere in the world. And I respected it. And not only was he incredibly intelligent, but he was just so down to earth and a lot of fun. And his disposition was so positive all the time. Despite the things that he was dealing with and despite everything that he has to see in his day-to-day work. I said, I have to make a character out of this guy, and I had to make him a meaningful character. And so he became Emmanuel, who you actually don't even really meet until toward the end of the book.
Yeah, it's like chapter... It's the second to last chapter, I think.
Yeah,
is when you actually meet him.
Yet he is integral, despite his kind of short, I guess, screen time, so to speak. His short appearance in the book. He is integral to discussing literally some of the deepest philosophical themes that I discuss in the entire book, which are prevalent throughout the entire series arc. Yeah, so I feel like basing characters on people who I know in real life adds an extra breath of life into those characters because not only have I interacted with those people, like that's their, I'm basing it off of some of these things. Like, I know how that person would react in this situation. I know how that person would do this because I've been there. I've seen that. And like I said, I feel like it makes the writing feel more real. There are certain characters that are just pure fabrication. For instance, Nails. Nails was...
I was gonna say, like, I'm not entirely sure I'd want to meet Nails, but he might be a good time to watch from afar.
He is probably one of the standout characters in the book, and once again, it only appears for a few short chapters, but extremely memorable and extremely meaningful, and that's one of the things that I think is important, is not just putting a character in there to fill a gap, but to actually carry meaning into the story. Like to show not just who they are, but who they are in perspective to the entire world and what that result is, of just their interaction with the rest of the world. Because Nails, for instance, he's a character that he gets on Roman's nerves like fucking crazy, but yet he's the type of character where you kind of see where his narrative goes, and it just sort of, it adds a lot of depth to the story. I'm not looking to just create a surface adventure story. I want this to be something that people can not just enjoy, but like find meaning in as well.
Yeah.
And the world is full of every different type of person, and there are definitely there are some standout characters that you run into in this world, and they are oftentimes, despite the fact that they are, literally unstable at times, but they can show, you can learn something from everyone, even if it's what not to be, or how to be, or just a lesson that you can learn from without being preachy. I'm not trying to be, my writing isn't preachy. I'm not trying to be that person. But because I feel like I see that way too much nowadays, and especially in cinema. Like there's like a very clear message or a clear narrative that they're trying to either support or further or defend in some of the cinema that's out there now, or some of the content. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to examine the human condition as it progresses in this ever-evolving technological world.
Yeah. I think, with a lot of the greater authors, they can tell a great story, and if you find some level of reference, that's on you. Because, Dune has a lot of allegory. Well, honestly, if you go a little bit further back, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit is very much spawned from World War I, and Lord of the Rings spawned from World War II.
Yeah.
But at no point in time are, like, Nazis or fascist or the war mentioned, so you can get entirely lost in this fantastical world, and it takes understanding the time period to be able to say, oh, I get it. I kind of get what he's putting down now.
You can draw the comparisons,
yeah,
right?
But it's not in your face. And I agree with that point that, there's a lot of stuff that, like, by the way, in case you missed it, and it's like, no. You tell me a good story, and let me figure it out later.
Right.
Like, I don't have to figure out today.
Because what I think everyone forgets is that the overt stuff is very obvious, and it's an approach of nuance that really resonates. Mm-hmm. That's what resonates. It's not the overt, here, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
Like,
in case you missed it. Yeah.
And
let me hammer it in.
And I feel like that's a quality that is. I feel like it's been lost for a while. I feel like it's making a comeback now, especially in just the era of podcasting in general and the era of like long form discussion, because you get the time to get into nuance and acknowledge that there is validity to, either side of every issue or what have you. I mean, name an example that you can apply this. But my goal is not to be like overtly anything. I want to explore the human condition, explore how we navigate a technologically advanced world, how we survive it, and how we basically continue to exist. How do we reach that next level? How do we become the multiplanetary species that, can prevail?
Yeah, take over other planets. Like, not just go to them, but take them over and start ruling the galaxy. I will say my favorite part of the book is how well everything is described, because there were so many moments in the book where you'd start talking about people standing in a room, and I would immediately say, oh, I know who that is. Oh, that's the Golden Phoenix. And before you even get to the main guy, I'm like, yeah, you described their clothing earlier, so I know what room I'm standing in. And then, man, I cannot remember his name, but the bouncer that was kidnapping and selling girls.
Reggie.
Yeah, so Reggie, and what was his previous name?
Roland,
okay. So Reggie and Roland, and when you started, because they're looking at Reggie as like the crew is looking at Reggie, like here's a photo of Reggie, and they're, you describe what he looks like, and they're all conversing back and forth, and then you open up a chapter about a guy, and nondescript up until the point where you mentioned the teeth, and I was like, oh shit, this is Reggie. And a couple sentences later, like, his name's mentioned as being Reggie, and then like middle towards the end of that chapter, when it's discovered that he was Roland as a kid, I was like, oh shit, yeah, there's that whole bit about whatever I can't remember the bully's name either.
Jace,
okay. So like Jace is missing teeth and was comparing his teeth to Roland's teeth, and everything stood out, but at no point in time did it feel like you're pandering to the reader, where you're like, okay, so this guy stands approximately 6'2". He has brown hair and he has blue eyes, and like you're reading through like a cop sheet.
right?
Like it's either part of the conversation, or I do really love like the bully scenario of describing characters, where he's like, hey, yeah, he looks like me now, he smiles and he's missing teeth.
Yeah.
And it's memorable, so that whether what they're wearing or what their features are later in the book, again, there's so many moments where you're not telling someone where they are immediately, but if you are paying attention, you'll know. Oh, I'm standing in the room with, the heroes or the villains, or like the worse than the villains. You always, like the Webitani,
yeah.
Okay. Like, what they're wearing. So when you see like red and black, it's like, okay, we're with the Webitani. I liked that because it made me more engaged. It's almost like learning something.
Right.
Where when you like you're learning something new and it clicks and you're like, oh, hey, I'm more familiar. I like this thing because, the synapses are firing, but they're not having to work now. But there's so many moments where the world felt familiar because it's already been described. And again, most of this book I listened to on audiobook. While I'm like cleaning the house, I'm getting cleaned up from MetroCon and prepping for this convention and getting our house clean and taking care of our dog and doing like lawn work and stuff, like living my life. And there's just so many moments where I kept being like, oh, I know who this person is. And then their name's mentioned. And I feel like, yeah, I got a one up right there. I knew what was going on. So that I really admirable, because I feel like that is a lost art. It can be fun sometimes when someone gets overly descriptive, but the way that you describe stuff is even if it's up front, it's in the background. It's nuanced. You're putting it in a situation it's not like a first-person view. If you ever read like romance or anything, they'll go through exactly what the guy looks like, and for the rest of the book, you've already got the idea. But in this, it's like an offhanded kind of thing that just sticks with you.
And that was it was important to me to, I guess, make sure that I reminded the reader of what was going on, because I talk about so many different characters, so many different factions and things like that. One of the things I really worked on was making sure that readers knew where they were, because nothing pisses me off more when I'm reading a book is when I'm like, wait, who are we talking about again? Like, who is this character, and what is? So I always try and use like description as a tool.
Yeah.
To make sure that people know not only who is in the room, but what they stand for, what they do, and like this is who they are. Yeah, that was important to me, just to make sure that the continuity was solid. I tried to make sure that it wasn't like, you can get pretty deep in the descriptive writing. I mean that
yeah.
And I mean, just like some of my inspirations in terms of like the sci-fi and dystopian classics, like Frank Herbert was one of my biggest inspirations. I enjoyed Dune like no other. And he wrote actually in the omniscient perspective, which is actually something that I took on as well. And I actually do it for a reason, which you realize at the end of the book why that is. But I feel like there are a lot of strengths to that, because you can utilize description for a lot of different elements to make sure that people are fully immersed in the book and they understand what's going on. Not just because, I'm rolling on with description, but because they're able to see that character. Like I wanted to make sure that all of the different characters and factions had their own unique elements to them.
Yeah, they all. One of my most common complaints, as much as I love William Gibson, I distinctly remember listening to one of his books in the Sprawl trilogy, and my biggest complaint is he is a big fan of pronouns. And there's one chapter that ended with a group of people in a vehicle, and it's all like he, she, they, them. It ends with a conversation, like they're talking, they're going somewhere, and the next chapter begins in some type of vehicle with a group of people, and I'm listening to it, I'm really confused, because all of a sudden it's like, what are they talking about? Like, I'm really, maybe we're a little bit in the future, and then he finally says like it was either a name or a place, and I'm like, oh, this is a totally different group of people. So I had to completely restart the chapter, because the whole time I was imagining the previous chapter's group of people, because there was no identifying marker. And even towards, since I finished up the last of the book this morning, I was on the last hour and a half of the audiobook, when we get Braxton and oh man, who's the shitty guy that framed him?
Darroch.
Okay, so Braxton and Darroch, and like when that opens, I already know where I'm at, and it was a comforting feeling. So on one end there's the like, I'm learning something and this is a one up, but on the other end, it makes it easy to where when you crack open with maybe a similar quantity of characters in a similar environment, that like I already know where I'm at. It's like, oh, I'm sitting aboard a ship.
I try and use some of the same descriptions that I do for each character, if I'm ever, I do like to do kind of like the mysterious introduction of a character. Like I'll describe something that about the character that either he does or the way he looks or the way he dresses, without saying the character's name for a little while.
Yeah.
But it'll be the same way that I described him previously, so that you know exactly who it is, and I use it almost as like a motive to basically remind the reader, like, this is who this person is. This is what I imagine they look like, at least broadly. But basically leaving almost like little breadcrumbs to make sure that the readers are keeping up with the kind of expansive number of narratives that I have. Because it is multi-narrative, and there are a lot of different storylines that are going on that all interconnect and are all related to each other. But it was important to me to make sure that the reader knew where they were. And that was my way of doing it, was making sure that I kind of describe characters in a similar way.
No, I think it really paid off. I know for me, that was the singular point that really stuck out. Even with the amount of stuff that I had going on in the background, I never felt lost. I never had to like rewind or like restart a chapter to be like, what's going on? Like, where am I at? Who's talking right now? Because you're like slowly beating it in over time instead of just all out doing a full description of every character, with the exception of like meeting Valeria's team. That's a little bit different. It's from Roman's perspective, what he's seeing in that moment. But all these other characters, it really helped me get through the book. And again, never get lost. When a chapter would start, you'd maybe mention the armor or a ship or something, and it's like, I already know where I'm at. My mind's already waiting for like, okay, but who's here? Like, I know where, but who now?
Yeah.
Or I know who, but now I want to hear where.
And that was actually, it's funny you mentioned that. In that scene, I felt like it was important to do a full description of each character because of the number of characters that were involved in that scene.
Yeah.
And because it's think about it. It's Roman, it's Valeria, it's Monique, it's Strider, Nails, and Dieter, all in one room. Yeah, so that's a lot of characters to be kind of narrating at once. And so to make sure that I kind of let everyone know that this was like an introductory to a very new group who had very unique personalities, each of them. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew where they were, knew who was being talked about, and knew what elements you were getting from which characters, because they are all very vastly different, which is kind of a fun thing to do. Again, like I really enjoy creating an eclectic feel from the characters that I have in the book, and I hope that that's what, how it translates at least, but that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good range. It made me think of like the team in Ghost in the Shell, which if you haven't seen it, would recommend. That is a book that really talks a lot about humanity, like what it means to be human in an age of like cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah.
But the way that you describe the world is interesting. When the kids go to the orphanage, the whole scene, particularly when they're all stacking up against the bullies finally, I feel was probably the best way to describe the world. In much the same way I said earlier, I don't like it when someone goes through like the police file of a character when they appear. It can kind of get annoying when it's like someone describes the world and they just leave you to it. If the author's like, yeah, so the character is in a dark and dingy world, and then the book is like, they're in a dark and dingy world, and it's like, okay. But the scene in the orphanage, Roman takes it up a notch there at the end, and in my head I'm predicting like, all right, this is the moment where they're all like, hey man, that's a little bit far, and that never happened, and I'm like, oh, this world's fucked.
Yeah.
Where the kids are like, no, this is totally cool, whatever, they're like another Tuesday.
Well, and it's not that it's totally cool, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of give Roman's internal monologue as well. Like I explained that like he doesn't really get the gratification he was hoping to get.
Yeah.
From doing what he did. I mean, he kind of has his items back, and he overcame the obstacles in his way, in a sense. But I wanted to show the brutality of a world in this kind of like under this system.
Yeah.
Which was from what they had experienced over the past year of being in that orphanage is just as brutal, if not more brutal in certain ways. And so it's kind of changed them in a sense.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling that I was looking to give, is that, he when you meet Roman as a kid, he kind of starts off as just kind of like your normal kid. He's growing up in the system and everything is fine.
He's got a good life ahead of him.
And then a very large deviation happens, and then he kind of gets introduced to the rest of the world, which is really the majority of the world.
Yeah, what most people experience.
And it is dark. And it changes him in a way that really kind of ends up defining who he turns into as an adult when you first meet him as an adult. That, along with a portion of the book that I haven't really explored, which is when he joins the Wibitani and then is basically raised in his teenage years in an illegal militia.
Yeah.
So to speak.
As the book goes further and further, you do have some moments of flashback. There's not a ton of those, which I also think is good. It's very modest. It's used when necessary, but you learn about the Wibitani through the Wibitani,
right?
Like in their dealings and what they're willing to do. And oh man, yeah, I did not write down anyone's name. So the leader of the Wibitani,
Modus Magni.
Yeah, Modus. You get a great idea of who the Wibitani are through him.
Yes.
And then there are like these little bits of conversation that happen even later in the book where you learn a little bit more about how they've been functioning. So obviously they're a gang. They're pretty intense. They run Earth Mode, which I think is a great name for almost like a gentrified bar, where it's like, Earth is a fashionable thing, Earth Mode.
And I also did that as a play on Modus Magni's name as well.
Okay.
As Earth Mode.
Yeah.
Modus.
Okay.
There's a lot of fun little hidden gems in terms of like how I decided to name things and how I decided to do things. For instance, the name of the planet Diorum. Diorum in Latin means of the gods.
Okay.
And one of the things that you see later on when Roman's an adult is that Roman is basically, he's kind of an expert in the wild of Diorum, which is, there's one mega city on the entire planet, which is called Kairos. The rest of the planet is essentially uninhabited. It's like, it's like a 99%. Like there are, and I'll explore this more in the comic books, but there are small percentages of people who live outside of the city. In certain ways, it's more so like they'll like live on plants that are refining certain things or mining certain things, or there's supposed to be like a gigantic technologically advanced farm where they grow the majority of the food that gets served in the city, just outside of the city walls. But for the most part, everything is within the city of Kairos, and the rest of it is just this untamed expanse of alien fauna that where everything wants to kill you. It is a literal jungle out there, and he is kind of an expert in that. And what you realize is that his ability to navigate these areas and these worlds, it gives him the ability to explore these ancient ruins that they find on the planet from a previous civilization, which is kind of elusive. Like they just sort of disappeared. They left behind all these magnificent ruins all over the planet, and they're called the Gleph. That's what the people on Diorum call them. And no one really knows a whole lot about them. And I base that on a lot of the ancient ruins that we find on our own planet.
Yeah.
Which I feel like we have not dived deep enough into. In terms of what our origins are, what all of that comes from. And I feel like there's been a little bit of a renaissance lately into finding that out, which I have enjoyed, being along on the ride for. I'm not like I've only visited a few of them, but seeing some of the people who are out there like preaching really interesting theories on what some of the origins are, and that maybe they're not exactly what classical archaeologists have talked about, that is fascinating to me. That we may have had advanced civilization, much longer ago. Like Graham Hancock stuff, super fascinating. There's a number of others who really dive deep on this, but I just can't think of their names right now. But that to me is fascinating, and it kind of shows like the reason why this is like a business of his is because of almost like a lack of respect for the ancient beginnings that led to where they are now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. And
why, like when you talk about the lack of respect, because the book opens talking about Vitalerium comes from the fracture,
the vital fracture,
the vital fracture,
which is what they call it, right? But it's basically a fracture in space-time.
But they don't know what the fracture is. They just know that Vitalerium comes from it.
Yes.
And I like that. So, you mentioned one of your inspirations was Dune. And I had this at the top of my notes, but even when I recommended this to my library, I said that this is like Dune with a cyan filter. And I'm not saying this in regards that it's like you're doing a 1-for-1 of Dune, but like it's just good writing. That the vital fracture is something that's disrespected in much the same way that the worms are disrespected in Dune. Like they're the things that create the spice, and the spice must flow, but they don't know anything about it. They don't care. They're there to take it because of what it can give them. And I like this idea that it's like they got all of this world-building technology, and then rather than learning about the fracture, they're just like, you know what, guns. Why not guns?
Yeah.
And that's a very relatable thing. Even atomic power. Early 1900s in America, atomic power, people had imaginations for all the things that it could do. And then the government's basically like, well, what about bombs? Like, can we turn it into something offensive? And that's why we've never really gotten much further in that, is because it's like, yeah, sure, stop with all the beneficial stuff. Make bombs.
Well, I think the problem is that once you are able to utilize, some of those elements for power, it becomes very easy to convert it into weapons grade, elements. So, so that's one part, and there is an element to that. I mean, that is something that is profoundly human. We're going to find ways to utilize resources in every way possible, and oftentimes that relates to weapons. One of the things I discuss in the first chapter is basically the reduction of weapons to the common man. That's why I like the gun laws in America, because the access to them is it's important to making sure that complete control is not obtained.
Yeah.
And because once that happens, things tend to go south in terms of a societal construct.
Yeah.
Sort of way. But that's neither here nor there. But the point is, as far as the vital fracture is concerned, they really don't know. And the reason is because, and this is something I don't really describe in the book, but one of the things that has happened in that universe is they have tried to send probes and vessels into the vital fracture that have never returned, or have, they don't know, or were they destroyed when they tried to enter the vital fracture? We have no idea. We have no way to communicate beyond. And it also speaks to the kind of mysterious nature of Vitalerium and how much they still don't know about it, because it is such a novel, exotic material. It's technically not even from this plane of existence. And that's one of the things that, it is literally a fracture in space-time that it comes from, and they know nothing else about it in terms of its origin. And that's one of the things that it's an important factor in how things are going to progress in terms of the overall story arc. That is a theme that is going to be repeated more than once, because the idea is that when it comes to science, they call it scientific theory. Why? Because that is our best guess as to, how things work and how things are used, based on our best knowledge currently.
Yeah.
Theory is open to change. It's open to, if we figure out a better theory, guess what? That theory takes over.
Yeah.
That's why doctors, when they don't do medicine, they practice medicine, because it is a constant practice. It is constantly progressing, and it is always evolving. And same thing with scientific theory. That's an important nature of the story. Is in the advanced age of humanity in the book, there's still so much that they do not know. And that is a little bit of a teaser, as far as like what we don't know about Vitalerium. You kind of see it a little bit with Roman's phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I won't give away too much on that because I don't want to spoil it, but some pretty interesting phenomenon is elicited from Roman's interaction with Vitalerium itself. And that is explained more and elaborated more on as you go on in the series. And as we find out more, as more is uncovered. But Vitalerium is a very mysterious element. So it's funny, I talked to a chemist who came up to my booth at one of the conventions.
Okay.
And she basically said, what's the atomic number of Vitalerium? And I was like, oh my God, that's a great question. I don't know. And she was like, well, it's a crystalline element, right? And I was like, yeah. But it is extremely volatile. Like, you can't get close to it with the right gear on without basically your skin melting off. The power potential in Vitalerium is obscene.
It's very reactive.
Extremely. And so she basically she stands in front of me and she's thinking for a bit, and she would like, for an element like that to exist, it would have to have an obscenely high atomic number. And I was like, well, what would it be? She would it would have to be at least like 427. And I was like, well, great. Guess what? Guess what the atomic number of Vitalerium is? 427.
BT 427.
Yeah, and I was like, hell yeah. And if you look at the element table, like that is a long shot jump from even the highest element that is on that table.
Yeah.
I think it goes up to like what it's in like the 130s or the 120. So that is a vast jump. So for something like that to exist in our, I'll call it a plane of existence, it would not only have to be an exotic material, but it would have to kind of come from somewhere exotic. And that is once again just a little bit of a teaser of what's to come.
I think it is
in
wild that
future.
you spoke with a chemist who, like, it sounds like she was, or they were low key kind of judging you.
Oh, 100% she was, and I'm glad she did, because these are the learning experiences that I am. Look, I'm very aware of who I am and where my knowledge is. I'm not a physicist. I'm not actually solving faster than light travel. This is my answer to a prospective physics theory as far as the exotic material that would power like an Alcubierre style drive. But I'm diving into this series headfirst myself and like learning as I go. And it's kind of ignited almost like a renaissance of learning.
That's good.
Which has been a lot of fun for me, actually. Like I never had this much fun in school. Like, but yet I find myself reading physics papers now, like trying to figure out like what do they think about this concept and how this could possibly be a thing. And like I'm interested. Like I'm into it so deep. Like I really like, the passion is endless for this. I really fucking enjoy it.
On my end, I feel like Godzilla always has to come up somewhere.
All right, let's hear it.
Between the original Godzilla film and the movie Rodan, before Rodan was ever introduced into Godzilla, the director was literally going to interview people about how things work, to be like, okay, I want to draw this correlation, but like, is this logical? Would this work?
Yeah.
And he would get people to kind of tell him Rodan is very earth sciences based. So he spoke with like geologists and a bunch of other people. He's like, okay, this is what I want to do. Can I do this? And these people would be like, no, it doesn't work like that. And so he would try to find a realistic way to make monsters fit in these scenarios based on what he was told by actual scientists, like real world science. My starting point that I didn't start with was supposed to be that in all of our conversations prior to this, I never knew that Earth was in the picture. I thought this was a science fiction world outside of Earth. So, like, imagine my surprise when we start on Earth.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that there are these like chains of Earth, like what we know, what our knowledge is, because these people, they're 6 centuries removed, but they're still chained to an education system and like a knowledge base that started from here. So yeah, it would have to have an atomic number, right? Like it needs to end up on a scale somewhere, because that's where it came from. That's where it started. So I think that's a lot of fun. And to that point, I do love how like it's definitely not Earth. There's words and phrases and sayings and identifiers that are not Earthian, and then you have like Nails, who comes from Earth, who says Earth stuff, and it's like every time Nails says something,
everyone's like, what the fuck is this guy
okay,
talking
what did you
about?
say? And the same goes for oh my god, what's the guy who's like mostly cyborg in that crew?
Strider.
Their info guy who's like telling them everything, and he'll say something and Roman's like, what? And the guy's like, okay, it's an Earth phrase.
He's like, don't worry about it. Just keep moving.
Like, you get the gist. But I like that there still has to be some type of connectivity, because this is, at its core, it comes from Earth. So it's not strictly like you're making you have a whole world that is a new world, but there's still like it has to somehow be connected to Earth. So I appreciate that. And when you talk about a lot of the like scientific descriptors, when people like melt in their own suits or something, whether it be like a gruesome one or an educational one, I love a lot of those descriptors. I feel like a lot of the importance in sci-fi is like balance of when to describe a lot of something and like when to back down, and you'll go into like these deep but quick tangents of how something works. So it's not strictly like philosophy or strictly deep science. You'll go on like a tangent and then pop right back out into this like very easy to live in world, and like very easy, at least in your own mind, to like figure out until you learn differently.
My perspective is, all right, who's going to read this book? It's us.
Yeah.
People from Earth.
Yeah.
right. So like the Earth references were important to me because it also grounds people in the story in a way that they can grasp it as well.
Yeah.
And for instance, like Roman's hover bike
is a rooster.
He calls
Love
it
the
rooster. Name. And that was actually, I got that reference from my brother Matt. I was trying to come up with names, and for some reason, like I never really have a problem coming up with names for things, because I always try and base them in something, whether it's mythology or like Latin or like something meaningful that like gives the whatever I'm talking about like some type of I guess an origin. Rooster is kind of an interesting one because I was trying to think of this, and for once I actually reached out to my brother Matt, and I was like, what should I call Roman's hover bike? Like, I want to give it a name that he calls it. And he suggests Rooster, which is kind of a random thing, but it's also, so we're from Rhode Island originally, and the state bird is the rooster.
I don't think I knew that.
And
that's wild to me.
And just to give a little homage to, I guess, where I was from, I was like, yeah, you know what? Hell yeah, let's call it Rooster. And I even give a little bit of a description of why it was called Rooster, which is just the guy who sold him the hover bike described this animal as some fierce earth beast which is funny because like Roman obviously doesn't know what it is, but he's just like, all right, if that's some vicious earth beast, then yeah, screw it. But it's a rooster, which is fun. So there is a little bit of comedy in it, and like it's hidden. Sometimes it's overt. Sometimes it's a little more nuanced. I mean, hey, they say write what you know, right?
Well, and like it's silly, but it fits really well because clearly he knows nothing about Earth. There's not a lot of Earth 600 years removed. There's not a lot of Earth in Diorum.
Right.
And because they are their own culture. So it's this weird, like, sure, they're human, quote unquote, but like they're not familiar with Earth customs. They clearly don't know about like Earth history or biology.
Yeah.
Because they have their own biology here.
But what is always interesting to like a foreign society is something that's exotic
it makes me think of like someone getting like a Chinese or Japanese tattoo without understanding the meaning. They're like, yeah,
usually
it's cool.
It's some different meaning that they didn't.
So like Rooster is this like fierce Earth creature, and while it's not entirely wrong, Roman would probably be a little bit upset if he saw what a rooster was.
Yeah, he'd probably laugh his fucking ass off.
Yeah,
I get that point.
Probably, yeah. So I guess for some more direct questions, because we're already kind of nearing an hour on this, there's a lot of teas in here because you spoke earlier about like the biology of the world that they're on, the biology and the history, and specifically when we meet Vitaleria, the pop star, she talks about some of the other places that she's been to on her tour.
Oh yeah.
And so that definitely brings up the question, like, are we going to see? Like, this book is very much based in Diorum, like, just in a very small area, with the exception of, like, the Vorkrill attack outside of the, grounds. But are we going to get to see more of, like, the space and more of the planet in future novels?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of broken up the story arc into segments. And so the first segment is going to happen on a planetary basis.
Okay.
The second segment is going to happen on a galactic basis. So we're going to be visiting other planets that are colonized by humans, and we're going to be basically exploring what their social and government structures look like. For instance, I can give you a little bit of a spoiler, a small one, but like one of the next planets that we go to after book 2 is going to be Ventura, which would be the third colonized planet. So the first one being Earth, the second one being Mars, the third one being a planet called Ventura. And Ventura was originally colonized by 2 different mega corporations, and essentially you've got like 52 and 48% respectively ownership of that planet by 2 corporations, one being the Syriax Corporation and 2 being Grazix Industries. And you get to see basically what a pure corporatocracy looks like, because it's basically being run solely by these corporations. And I like the idea of exploring different types of social makeups and social constructs, whatever you want to fucking call it. But it's interesting to me because, once again, as we progress as a society, we've got a lot of different ways that we can go. And progress, I feel like, isn't always beneficial. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can progress. We can just as easily progress into a burning building as we can into greener pastures. So we want to. So there's value to exploring, different ways that we can kind of fuck it up, depending upon which way we go. That's one thing that I think will definitely be coming in future books. Is we're going to be visiting all of the other human colonized planets. That's in segment 2. And then in the third segment of the book series, each segment will probably be a couple of books. We're going to start getting weird.
Okay.
And that I'm actually very excited for. And even now I'm kind of deciding or having ideas about where I want to go with that. Like, I may wake up, in the morning and just have this brilliant idea about what I want to do in book 4. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's definitely something I want to explore. And so I have copious notes about all of the different books, like in the future of the series, that I have written down and kind of elaborated on. And we're going to dive deep into a lot of different elements, a lot of different themes, a lot of different social structures, and we're going to have some fun.
Nice. So that does kind of lead into another question I had was, will we see different lead characters? Like, is Roman the character through this series, or is Roman just a vehicle for the rest of the series?
Roman is an extremely important character to the series, and that was
the final chapter alludes to that.
Yes,
yeah, the Sentinels,
and that is the case because I love, ever since I was a kid, I've always been fascinated with like mythology.
Yeah,
and so this book is almost like an homage to my love for like mythology and ancient civilizations and everything else, and in a way, because you're basically watching the emergence of a future mythological hero. And that's more of speaking to the fact that no one does anything alone. No one does anything by themselves. And a lot of things happen purely by circumstance. And that is incredibly important to just the story narratives in general. But I feel like a good central character is incredibly important to a series. And Roman is very much that. I'm not going to say what his fate is or anything like that because, I mean, there's a lot of books to write. But I love the idea that one person can make such a massive difference if they are focused enough, if they have enough discipline, and if they make the right decisions. And that is something that if anything is taken from my book series, like, that is what I hope people take, is that, one person can be the world to the world. I mean, depending upon the decisions you make and how tenacious you are. And I feel like that's been tyranny proliferates in a society where everyone feels powerless.
Yeah.
And I am not a fan of tyranny, and big surprise. And I feel like just to be able to show people that, like, the decisions of one person can make such a massive difference is important now more than ever. I feel like we live in uncertain times, and maybe that's just because I'm getting older and I'm fucking crotchety as shit. I don't know, but I guess that's just a little gem. I hope that any of my readers pick up is that everyone has a perspective problem in terms of understanding what their effect on the world is. Maybe that that illusion needs to be dissolved. And I hope it does to an extent. Like I feel like a lot of good can come from a populace that really understands their worth and doesn't get bogged down by just the feelings of like, I'm powerless, I'm not in control, I am, not unique.
I think between like Roman's dad and Emmanuel, okay, there is definitely that, like, it's not necessarily underlined through the book, but Roman has that in his life. Like, we may not necessarily see it, but it is there in the book. Like, it was provided to him, where it's like, do what you can to stand out.
And Roman has I think another important thing is, like, Roman isn't acting alone. Yes, one person can make a big difference, but no one's ever acting alone. Like, Roman has a lot of mentors throughout his life, like one being, his parents, his father, just his upbringing. Two being, Modus Magni, who he has a pretty tenuous relationship with, which becomes very clear when the two
it's almost like a stepfather figure.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it. And three being, Emmanuel, who is kind of like a little bit of a guiding light in his life, but very much, from the background. Like, you don't get to see how much that's the case until you actually get to meet Emmanuel at the end of the book. And I feel like that's another important thing that I want, people to take from this, is that you can learn something from everyone. Like, you need to have people in your life that are guiding you in the right direction, because it's part of what makes you. Like, it's part of what turns you into who you are. There's an old saying, I don't know if this is true or not, but like they say that like you are 75% of the people you are surrounded with from literally like birth. Like you are, which is almost a way of saying like you are not unique, but at the same time, that extra 25% is the make or break. That's what sets you apart, and that is not to be undermined.
Yeah, you're the result of your environment, but humans are also an environment.
Right.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where it goes, especially because we get so little of Emmanuel. I'm really interested to see where that goes in like coming stories. But unfortunately, Sky Puppy closes soon, I think. But one question I had, and it's probably the wildest question. We're going to go back to the orphanage.
Let's do it.
The woman that picked up Roman and dropped him off, because I cannot get it out of my head. Was she aware of the environment that she was taking him to? Was this like a way for her to like get money, basically? Was the whole thing like, was she morally good, or is like, fucking whatever, give me money for the kid?
I think that's my reason for doing that was to show the nature that some people exhibit, which is like almost oblivious, like so, people who are so caught up in their own ideals and beliefs that they become oblivious to the rest of the world and how things work and just, the true nature of things, like almost blind, like wearing rose-colored glasses. Like, what I am doing is righteous. What I am doing is right. What I do this because these are my beliefs. I do this because this is supposed to be that. It almost blinds her from understanding. Like, yes, she does it as part of, basically making a living. It's not purely motivated by that. It's almost like she's too naive to even know what her...
And she refuses to step out of that naivete.
Yeah. It's a naivety thing, and I can't tell you how many people I've met in real life who are adults, like true adults, like all in their 30s plus, who just do not have a nuanced or understanding perspective of the world around them. And I'm not shitting on the concept of belief either. Like, there's something to be said about that as well in terms of
other than the part of the book where you shit on the concept of belief.
Right. Well, hey, but once again, that's a devil's advocate thing. I try and take
the chapter with Emmanuel it's good at the start, and I think it's great at the end of that chapter. Like, that's a really strong chapter.
Yeah. Well, that was my goal, was to have a really philosophically deep exploration of his conundrum.
Yeah, it's I mean, technically the last chapter of the book, because the epilogue is the only thing that follows.
Oh no, there's one more chapter where
you're right.
Yeah.
But it feels like, I remember when that chapter ended, like in my mind the book was done, because I was like, how strong of a chapter that was.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's really kind of you. I'm glad it came across as that. because that's certainly what I was shooting for, was to basically be like, whoa, like I want people to think when they're reading this book. Like I want it to make people think. That is, if I can be a drop in the bucket of sanity, like in terms of making people like actually conceptualize their surroundings and their situation and what it is to live this life. I mean, that would be a goal. That would be a goal achieved, I would say. Yeah. So it's I don't like personal my personal beliefs. I understand like the benefits that there are in having a belief in something higher, and there is certainly an element of that in the story that maybe hasn't been explored to like as deeply yet in book one, but as the book progresses, we're gonna get into it. I really just wanted to try and make people think a little bit outside of the box. Like, not everything is black and white. Not everything is cut and dry. That's why the Sacred Order of Equilibrium, which is essentially the predominant religion in the future, they are run like a religion, and you find out reasons why there is even corruption within in book 2.
Okay.
But the themes that are discussed and kind of disseminated are very strong in terms of balance is kind of the ultimate. Even, I mean, balance on a level that like we can't even really perceive in our human minds. So almost like,
well, it's
like a star is born on one side of the universe that gives life to 10,000 different species on a planet. At the same time, a star dies on the other side of the universe and swallows 3 planets whole and destroys basically, however many species. But it, almost in like a very unfeeling, like almost like Old Testament style God. And I know that's kind of, it sounds incredibly harsh when I put it like that, but like they're with the vastness of our universe, like there is something to that. Basically just putting us in our place and humbling us and just saying like we are incredibly small in the scope of things, which not everyone thinks about on a day-to-day basis.
It's more of like a Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes kind of thing that makes you think of how tiny you are in the universe, the speck of dust screaming into the stars. So, well, I have probably a dozen more questions, but nowhere near as much time. But it's been a lot of fun to sit and chat. Like, I've been really... I've been trying to avoid, like, talking to you about the book because I didn't want to, like, spoil my own thoughts or anything. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to whatever book 2 holds for us. But for now, where can people find you and book 1?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Vitaleriumseries.com. That's my website. You can get, basically everything on there. You can also find the book on Amazon. The audiobook is on Audible and Amazon as well. The comics you'll get on my website. Any of the limited edition stuff that any collectors out there who are really interested in that stuff, you can find that on the website. On social media, I'm at Vitalerium Series, and I also have a Patreon where I kind of release, behind the scenes stuff and some of the, creative process that is involved in actually getting some of this content out there. That's inside Vitalerium on Patreon. And yeah, I'm on like every social media that's out there.
On your site, do you have anything listed about like what states you're going to be in, what conventions you're going to?
Yeah, you can find that on my Patreon. I usually release that info for free.
Okay.
But I also list that on my website. Like next week, this weekend I'm at Tampa Bay Comic-Con with you. Next week I'm going to be at Fan Expo Boston.
Going up there.
Yeah, I'm heading up. Actually, that's the old stomping ground too. So that'll be fun to be back. I actually went to school in Northeastern, So that's I'm very familiar with the city of Boston. I'm excited to go back and see some old friends and see some of the old watering holes for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a few good drinks and have myself some fun. And I'm a northeastern dude, born and bred, but I live down in Florida now. Because just like every northeasterner, I moved down to Florida. I just did a little earlier than most.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
that's awesome. I appreciate the time. It's always fun chatting with you. And now that I've actually experienced the book, it's been nice to get that out of the way, because all of the conversations prior to this have been more conceptually based. But it's been fun actually chatting about the content within the book. Yeah, I really appreciate it, man. And for anyone listening, check out his socials. And I know a lot of people around the U.S., so hopefully someone I know will end up seeing you at one of your out-of-state conventions, because I do know people in the Northeast as well. So I don't know, maybe someone will see you in Boston. But yeah, appreciate it. And we got one more day tomorrow. So just a few more hours of sleep and a few more hours of convention.
Yeah, another day, man. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been fun talking with you.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. Well, to everyone listening, go check out his stuff. Obviously, well, if you're listening to this, hopefully you already checked it out. But if you haven't already checked it out, go check it out now. Since some stuff has been kind of spoiled, maybe this is enough to get you interested in it.
Well, what do you think? I had a ton more things to say and questions to ask, but this is as far as we could get. If you have more things to say or ask, please reach out to Nicholas. Check the show notes to find links to his socials and email. Please reach out to the guy. I'm sure having a bunch of random people react to his content in any way will fuel the fire that's currently working on book 2. Speaking of fueled fires, stay tuned for my next full episode, which I've been waiting for a year to record, titled September of a Down. Listen to me and Matt Vigo of Deathstroke Sound talk about Serge Tankian's book Down with the System, and listen to us gush about one of our all-time favorite bands, System of a Down. Do yourself a favor and listen to their entire discography from beginning to end before the episode releases. As for me, you can find me everywhere on social media at Twimby Podcast, or email me at twimbypodcast@gmail.com, or remain anonymous and send me a little bite by clicking the link at the end of the show notes. This was a lot. I'm out.